Much like the original game, Quake 2 also saw 2 mission packs launched shortly after its own release, and once again, each of them was developed by a different individual smaller studio. Unlike the first game, however, Quake 2 only saw 1 additional expansion release in its later life, so in total it now only boasts 3 expansion packs instead of 4 like Quake 1. The Reckoning, Ground Zero, and Call of the Machine. Now I'm gonna be honest with you, although these first 2 expansions take significantly longer to complete than Quake 1's mission packs did, they are far less unique or creative with what they're attempting to do, and part of this is due to the base game's own more constrained narrative and universe. There's only so much a developer can do with a sci-fi setting built around having very little plot or story, and to be upfront with you, I really feel like these first 2 mission packs suffered greatly from not having any of that id Software old guard involvement. All of the criticisms I've heard about Quake 2, and even defended it from, totally apply to these original 2 expansions. I'm specifying the original 2 because the third one was released over 2 decades later, and none of this applies to that one. I'm getting there. But trying to get through the Reckoning and Ground Zero was brutal, even as a Quake fan, and specifically a Quake 2 defender at that. By the time I got to that third and good Quake 2 expansion, I'd been playing so much Quake over the previous few months that I felt like I was going insane right alongside the characters I was playing as. The old critique that Quake 2 is just a series of tech-based sci-fi corridors with no atmosphere may not be totally true for that campaign, but it definitely is for these 2. The body horror and suffocating atmosphere is basically gone, and the disturbing nature of the enemy we're facing, i.e. the only really interesting thing about this setting, is all but ignored throughout. The level design is good, sometimes anyway, and the campaigns themselves are adequately designed, but they're still pretty rough to get through since they're just smaller mini duplicates of Quake 2's base campaign, but worse. That isn't to say that these mission packs have nothing at all to offer though, as there are a few cool and notable things worth pointing out. So let's get right into it and take a look at all 3 of Quake 2's expansions, starting with the first one to release, The Reckoning. But first, if you find yourself enjoying the video, then please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment down below with your thoughts. YouTube has been messing with its algorithm lately, and my channel, along with a ton of other video game content creators, have been hit really hard for some reason by these changes. Hopefully with enough support we can weather this storm, and your support is very appreciated, so if you want to help me out, these actions go a long way. You can also support me by becoming a YouTube member or by heading over and subscribing to my Patreon to help me keep making these videos and allowing me to put the spotlight on these old games. Thanks again, everyone. The Reckoning was developed by Xatrix Entertainment before they later rebranded as Grey Matter Interactive Studios.
Jesse, have you heard of a company called Grey Matter?
Then, that name only lasted a couple of years before they got swallowed up and merged into Treyarch. The game they're probably most notable for is Return to Castle Wolfenstein, but you may have also heard of Redneck Rampage and its sequels, Kingpin Life of Crime, and Call of Duty United Offensive, which is pretty much their entire catalog before they stopped existing, unless you count their first 2 games, Siberia and Siberia 2 Resurrection. Although I do actually like Return to Castle Wolfenstein quite a bit, their reputation as a studio isn't great, and I'm going to be upfront here and tell you now that this expansion does little to help that. It's not the worst thing I've ever played or anything. I mean, it is Quake 2 after all, so as a game it's fine, but it is probably the worst Quake-related content I've covered so far, and probably one of the worst official Quake campaigns overall. I really did not enjoy my time with this campaign. Now, although I did have some experience with Quake 2 growing up, I had never played any of these expansions before doing so for this video, so I can't attest to how much the remaster improved The Reckoning over its vanilla release, but based on what I've read online, it's a similar gameplay experience between them. The expansion began development before the base game had even launched, which gave the devs a little more time to work on it, and it finally hit the market on May 27th, 1998. Booting up the campaign, players are treated to a brand new cutscene to lead them into their new adventure, which is where we meet our new player character codenamed Joker.
How about another joke, Murray? Society!
This new character is part of an elite team of Marines being sent in to infiltrate and destroy a base built on the moon that orbits the planet Strogos. But of course, as always, something goes wrong.
I'm hit! Primary power is out. Auxiliaries aren't engaged. I think I lost the fuel cell. She's dead. I'm going in. I'm
This is the first of the game's 5, previously 4, units depending on if you're playing the remaster or not. Joker has been cut off from his squad and must now fight his way back to them so he can assist in the assault, and the place he's crashed into has us in a swampland outside of our intended landing zone. This first area, called Wilderness, is actually really cool in my opinion. I don't know why, but I found it to be a pretty good start to the expansion. It feels very open, and the laser fences give off that feeling like we've landed behind enemy lines somewhere we shouldn't be. Also, you'll see we're introduced to a new enemy right away called... This is another example of Strogg fauna being native critters to the planet, though they are no less hostile than anything else we've had to deal with before. In an example of starting really strong, these enemies are super cool, not only in their concept giving us another local life form, but also because occasionally we can see them form together and literally sing some kind of chant. I'm not sure what this is, but I do think it's really cool, and the player can hear this faintly from across the map when they do it. Makes everything feel more ominous. Once we fight our way through the winding pathways of this wilderness area, we come across the entrance into the sewer system. This is where the first signs of the Reckoning's ever-decreasing quality begin to show. Pretty much the whole level here revolves around navigating this maze-like series of different tunnels and pools of water, all of which use the exact same textures for everything. The sewer level itself isn't the worst thing, and it's pretty short once you get the hang of it, but this next level though features all of the same problems but with an even worse level design. It's here that Joker has to find another way out of these tunnels and back out into the wilderness area again to circumvent the laser fences that were cutting us off from accessing the compound. There is some admittedly clever platforming here, but it's overall pretty standard fare for a Quake 2 level. Once we manage to find an exit, the front door of the next unit isn't far off, and there's just a little bit of traveling to clear out the opening building and make our way out of the wilderness. This expansion does bring back the eagle-eye viewed map scans from the base campaign, which I did appreciate, although they had to change the voice, presumably due to not having access to the original voice actor.
Join with remaining members of Strike Force. Gain entrance to base intelligence facility.
This second unit is one of the larger ones we've seen yet, and our primary objective is to break into the intelligence center and extract the precise location of the enemy Strogg fleet. The outer compound is where the expansion's bad level design starts to kind of set in, but it does get worse from here, make no mistake. Shortly after getting in and killing some Strogg troops, Joker watches the rest of his squad die in front of him and grabs the data CD he'll need off one of their corpses. We also see a drop pod with the call sign Rampage on it as a reference to the studio's other game that I mentioned before, Redneck Rampage. A bit more fighting leads us into the inner compound, where we can find a laboratory section and a warehouse section. This area is actually not that bad. It feels a lot more like the kind of level we could have found in the earlier units of the base game, only quite a bit heavier on the enemies. This mission pack is brutal, and throws a lot more of the tougher enemies at you than the base game ever did this early on. I also like this little puzzle with the laser that blows a hole in the wall. You know what, I'll give this expansion that. It does have a few interesting little scripted bits like this. But man, this one is brutal to play through. I was having to play so carefully and lure Strogg into this laser to take them out for me because I had so little health by this point. So I abused quick saves. Don't judge me, there's a reason Civvy hasn't covered this expansion beyond a few sentences.
One of the things I noticed when playing a little of the first Quake 2 expansion by Zatrix was that it was considerably more difficult than the main campaign.
Anyway, we're in the core reactor now, and we've got to find a bunch of power cubes, because what would an id Software-related game be without having to find a dozen keycards, runes, CDs, and other MacGuffins to progress every level? Except when id Software does it, it's fun, and when Zatrix does it, it's literally a fight for your very life. We're still in the second unit, less than 25% of the way through, and this one area has 4 tanks and 6 gladiators, not to mention this one new enemy they introduced for this expansion. The Repair Bot, or Fix Bot. It's not clear which one is the accurate name. Although this enemy is introduced in this expansion, it doesn't really matter as it only appears in this area and a bit earlier in the outer compound, and then never again in the whole game or any other expansion. It's kind of like a mini medic that can revive enemies, but I didn't even notice this thing while playing and struggled to find it even when rewatching my footage, so it's not really that notable of an enemy, but props to Zatrix for trying something, I guess. Once we get the power cubes we needed, we can head back out to the inner compound again before gaining access to the warehouse. I'm getting flashbacks to Disillusion of Eternity. The warehouse is a bit less psychotic than the core reactor, as there aren't any tanks, but there are still 6 gladiators scattered around, which will become the bane of my existence by the end of this video. All my homies hate gladiators. It's one of the more generic levels of the expansion, but it does still have some interesting parts, like these moving blocks in this flooded area. The key to the next area is down here though, and once we get that, we can press on through a storage tank that will grant us backdoor access into the intelligence center, which acts as the final area of this unit. One good thing I will say about this level is that it throws us a new toy to play with in the form of the Ion Ripper, an automatic frisbee launcher that both looks and feels like a significantly worse version of the disc launcher gun from the Tribes games. I want to like this weapon because it's cool and pretty powerful, but man, using it just kinda sucked. Maybe it was just me, but it didn't feel impactful, and the shots bouncing everywhere was annoying to deal with. Doubly so when it was enemies using it against me. The developers must have thought this thing was fire though, because right after getting it, they throw not 1, but 2 super tanks at us. Or rather, beta class super tanks, which are more powerful and feature power shields for additional durability. The beta class enemies are just stronger versions of the old enemies, and the remaster replaced a lot of the old ones with the beta class anyway, so don't even worry about it. Just know that half the enemies in this expansion are tougher than the ones in the base game. At the end of this level is the computer terminal containing the location of the Strogg strike fleet, so we did manage to get what we came here for after all. With that done and the fleet's location now known, our objective updates and tells us to progress into the industrial zone, which, as you might guess, is the next unit of the game.
Initiate scan. Exiting military compound. Entering industrial region.
This is where all bets are off, and the expansion just spirals into a myriad of attempts to kill you. In-universe, it's interesting because clearly they think we're a threat, but in-game, it's infuriatingly annoying. Within a few seconds of this first area, we're already dealing with another super tank, and also several laser guards, which I'm not going to bother giving an animation, but that are the single most annoying enemy across the whole of Quake 2. Imagine a hit-scan enemy that zaps you with a big red line of health remover that not only hit-scans you, but reminds you that you're being hit-scanned the whole time it's doing it. The game is just insulting you at this point. See what I mean? This is the first level of the expansion that really acts as a true hub, as it connects to multiple areas and will be coming in and out of it as we play to beat the unit. We can't enter the refinery until we find the red keycard, and the red keycard is being held in the outer base, which we need the green keycard to access, and the green keycard is here in the industrial facility, but it's being guarded by yet another super tank. And the best weapon I have is this stupid disc gun, but hidden in this courtyard is another new weapon called the Phalanx Particle Cannon. I'd say it's the best new thing this expansion has to offer, as it's basically just a double-barreled slug thrower, which is cool. However, I still didn't use it very much because it's less effective than the rocket launcher, and it eats through my slug ammo, which I'd much rather spend on my railgun. Well, when I finally find one, that is. At least it only uses 1 bullet instead of 2, and in the remaster it deals double damage to energy shields, which is super useful since so many enemies have those now. With the key we needed, we're able to make our way into the outer base. I actually sat on the screen for nearly a full minute after this happened out of sheer frustration. From a visual design standpoint, this level looks really cool. The big city in the distance, the flooded area we have to dive into, but don't get used to it because we'll be buried in warehouse corridors soon enough. As I was writing this, I nearly got confused seeing this area is called the Outer Base, but the last unit has an area called the Outer Compound. I found myself missing the interesting level names of the original Quake and its expansions. Even the base Quake 2 campaign had some cool level names, but here in The Reckoning, we're soon to be treated to even more incredible area names such as Lower Hangars, The Hangars, Cargo Bay. You'll see as we go, they're descriptive, but they're certainly not creative. Also, I hate the layout of the outer base. It makes no sense and it's not fun to play through. Typically, I can overlook one or the other separately, but when a level is both at the same time, it's just painful. If you can grit your teeth through this area, you'll soon find yourself entering the refinery. This one is better, and I had more fun playing through it. There's some pretty cool things about this area too, and the layout is also much better. There's a lot of toxic slime, which I'm pretty sure is called Stroyant, and the fuel production facility for that Strogg fleet we're planning to destroy is also here, which we'll need to single out for our boys to hit with an airstrike. Problem is, the airstrike marker we need got snagged by a group of Geks and taken back to the industrial facility we just came from. So we have to backtrack a bit, only to find out that they ran straight through the facility into the wilderness outside of the industrial complex altogether, called the Badlands. But in order to get there, we have to first gain access to and enter the water treatment plant. This is a relatively small area, all things considered, but it does have a major focus on large open rooms with a lot of space to move around, and just enough verticality to maintain a solid flow throughout. It's a pretty quick in and out map, but not bad at all. Its main purpose is to act as an in-between for taking us from the industrial facility into the Badlands. This is one area I liked a lot. We enter through this old rusted water treatment area, which opens up into the wilderness of the planet Strogos. There's really only a few levels across the Quake 2 catalog that give the natural landscape of Strogos a lot of focus, so I think that's one thing this expansion does really well, and I've got to give it credit for that. We're taken through a variety of winding canyons and dark caves, all crawling with the local predator Geks and barracuda fish. It's also well designed enough that the flow feels natural and easy to play. It's actually one of the best levels in the game in terms of immersion. I have no idea what the intended story was behind the weird chant thing that these creatures do when they're hitting this possession pose either. That question does kind of get answered retroactively way later by other developers in another expansion, but I'm getting to that. With the airstrike marker in hand, we can push through the Badlands straight back into the refinery thanks to an alternative exit in the level, and then drop our airstrike marker to take out the Strogg fleet's source of fuel production.
Viper Squadron to Recon 4, commencing delivery. Clear the area. Repeat, clear the area.
Looks like this gas station just went out of business.
Exiting industrial region. Entering Strogg Spaceport. Infiltrate enemy transport and proceed to Moon Base.
This is the worst unit of the entire expansion. The Spaceport. Our goal here is to fight through said spaceport, locate the Strogg freighter, and ride it to the Strogos moon to destroy the target fleet. We enter the level through the lower hangars, where we are immediately bombarded by Strogg. This map is just saturated in them. We're talking 93 different enemies stuffed into this one area. I have to wonder how this map even ran on a Pentium 2 desktop back in 1998. Like, what was the frame rate like? If this level ran even smooth-ish, then it's a testament to Carmack's id Tech 2 engine here. It's also just visually the most uninteresting area of the game too, so not only is it a series of stuffy corridors jam-packed with enemies, but it also all looks the same. I don't like being overly negative in these videos, but you're not giving me much to work with here, Zatrix, or Gray Matter Studios, or whatever. The next level isn't much better either, don't be fooled by the inspired name. I honestly don't think this level is as bad as the one before it. The layout is a little bit less frustrating, and the conveyor belts moving crates around the map adds an interesting visual dynamic that helps make it easier to keep track of where you are and prevent everything from looking so samey. It's also got some good verticality, which is one of the biggest strengths of the Quake games in my opinion. You gotta be doubling down on your verticality to get the most out of your Quake maps. The entrance to the freighter is blocked off by a security force field, so in order to access it, we'll have to stow away in a storage crate to try and pass ourselves off as cargo, which works actually. Interestingly enough, the Strogg freighter was the third part of Unit 4 in the original 1998 expansion's release. Night Dive split it into its own unit for the 2023 remaster, making it the only singular level of Unit 5 which shares its name. I'm not sure what the exact reason for their doing this was, but I guess thematically it does kind of make sense, as this level is sort of its own thing anyway. It's actually a decent level too. The reduced gravity is fun to play with, although we rarely get a chance to use it in a meaningful way, but it's got a nice flow to it overall. And since it's not too big, it's easier to play through without feeling completely exhausted. The end of the level sees us taking on 2 tanks and a tank commander, which did give me some trouble though. I assume the only reason they didn't stuff 4 super tanks in there is because they wouldn't fit. Once we're able to assassinate the bridge crew and stop the automatic self-destruct sequence, we can kick back and ride this thing straight to the Strogos moon.
Initiate scan. Exiting Strogg Spaceport. Entering moon base.
It's down to the wire now, and the devs want you to know it, so they spawn a tank commander in front of you at the start of the level, along with half a dozen hit-scan laser enemies. Thanks, Atrix! It makes sense that we would exit into the cargo bay of the moon base, so I understand this decision, but the walls of various cargo crates stacked up literally everywhere makes this mission look visually nearly identical to the spaceport areas. It's almost headache-inducing how much of this game's latter half is just rusty, dark orange warehouse rooms stacked full of cargo crates. Unless you are super familiar with this expansion, then seeing multiple quick clips of these crate rooms from across different levels would leave you thinking they're all the same area. I'm pretty sure this one expansion nearly drove me into a Lovecraftian madness of losing my grip on reality. It all looks the same! After we push forward quite a ways, we do finally see some more open areas, with the window showing us the Strogos moon exterior, which that part is super cool. I like that. They should have done more of that. The command center is the final level of the game, and an enormous sigh of relief to me as it's laid out well and there's some much needed variety like these Strogos moon caves, which although we didn't see in the base campaign, did show up in the Quake 2 N64 version, so there's almost some kind of continuity there. I think that's really cool. I'll talk about that later. The low gravity moon caves are fun, and saving them for this last level was a good idea because it kind of feels like payoff. Like we're finally seeing something new here at the end of the line. Although they did that thing where the ground is slippery like old ice levels used to do in games, which is super annoying to deal with. The moon base's main reactor is housed here in the command center, so all we have to do is find the reactor, shut it down, and let the whole place self-destruct itself into oblivion along with the Strogg Counter-Strike fleet. So we walk around, push some switches, and open the core up to a little sabotage. Easy enough, we're almost done. Oh wow, so they've got another Macron here guarding the moon base, and believe it or not, I'm pretty sure he's way harder to kill than the base game Macron, but I looked it up and can't prove it, so maybe it just felt that way. It's not really explained how this thing is here either, since Bitterman killed the Strogg leader, but the common consensus from what I can tell is that there's several warlord leaders across their forces, and this is just one of them. Okay, cool. Well, that's done. Let's get the hell out of here. One final push sees us running back through the cargo bay as the whole base falls apart in on itself, and we try to find a way to escape before we wind up space dust like the rest of this place is about to be. The fact that they bothered to program in all of this falling debris and whatnot was kind of an extra mile that I appreciate. Luckily, there was a ship in the base's hangar waiting for us.
Come on, boy, move it! Pressurizing, -2. Outer hatch sealed. We're on our way, sir. Picking up some heavy chop. I see it. Shockwave. Hang on. That's it. We're clear. What the hell happened down there, sir? It's over. For now.
So the Marine known as Joker landed on Strogos, infiltrated an industrial facility, fought his way onto an enemy freighter, stormed a moon base, killed a Strogg warlord, and then destroyed said moon base. Not a bad ending. The expansion itself, however, I mean, I've said it enough that I think you get the gist. It's rough. It's not horrible. Like, by way of being Quake 2, obviously it's going to be a fun game. And there was clearly a lot of effort put into this thing. I don't think the quality of the Reckoning is due to laziness or low effort. It's just some bad level design decisions and aggressive enemy placement decisions that cause the whole thing to feel so frustrating to deal with. It's a challenging expansion, much more challenging than the base game was, that much is for sure. I also think it's probably the worst of the available Quake 2 campaigns, even counting the ports. The Reckoning isn't poorly made, it's just not very fun, and that's a problem. It also fails to offer or deliver anything new to players that you can't get in the base campaign besides 2 new weapons, a trap item, and some new enemies, only one of which is interesting. Even the Quake 1 expansions tried to be daring and different, but this is really just more of the same. Those even introduced brand new soundtracks that totally changed the vibe of the game, but this one straight up reuses half the Sonic Mayhem score for every map, which, while I love that score, starts to get old after a while. Ground Zero does this too, only bringing in a few new tracks from Sonic Mayhem and then reusing several from the original game. I guess that's not the worst way to go about it though, and the new Sonic Mayhem tracks are great, but I just wish that they had both gotten completely new original scores for their entirety. If you love Quake 2 and you can't get enough of its gameplay, world, and aesthetic, then there might be something here for you. I'd probably exhaust all of the other offerings first though over this one. I didn't hate The Reckoning, but I really doubt I'll ever play it again, and if I do, then it won't be for fun. Ground Zero, much like The Reckoning, was mostly maligned by the majority of the Quake fans on release, but unlike The Reckoning, I actually kind of liked this one. Or at the very least, I think I see what it was going for, more so than The Reckoning. It's worth mentioning that I played the remastered version for this video, and I've never played this expansion in its original form, which was likely a major reason why I kind of liked it, because after doing some reading, the vanilla version of this campaign was a nightmare. It was also developed by Rogue Entertainment, a studio name you might recognize from my coverage of the Quake 1 expansion, since they developed Dissolution of Eternity, which was another expansion I kind of liked in spite of its negative reputation. Ground Zero is not as good as Dissolution of Eternity. Shockingly, Ground Zero also has the least amount of plot of any of the Quake 2 campaigns. I say shockingly because Rogue Entertainment's previous expansion was the most plot-heavy of the Quake 1 campaigns, and their game before that, Strife, was practically an RPG and one of the single story heaviest boomer shooters I can think of. We open on another really fun cinematic of an Earth ship sending out what looks to be several dozen more single marine dropships towards Strogos. A bunch of them are checking in to ensure all systems are go, and we see the call sign of our new protagonist, Stepchild. Suddenly, a series of Strogg starfighters come flying up from the surface and start firing off shots and taking out several of our allied ships. The capital ship is unable to leave, along with the rest of the human fleet due to a gravity well activating and trapping them in the planet's pull. It's up to us to destroy that gravity well.
I'm going in.
Jumping out of the pod, we watch it sink into the lava as the ground around us shakes. This is the lower mines, and it's loaded with explosive red crystals and plenty of angry Strogg to contend with. Our job is to reach the tectonic stabilizer and destroy it before pressing on towards the gravity well we need to shut down. The unit itself is fine overall, I think, and its levels do feel a bit better layout-wise than most of the Reckoning, but I was a little bit disappointed to see how much less creative this expansion was than Rogue's last one for the original game. Ground Zero suffers from the same atmosphere issue we saw in the Reckoning of it looking exactly like the base campaign and really not offering anything new or exciting enough to justify its own existence. I do like that we're pressing buttons and moving these crystals around so soon after starting our first mission. It's cool and feels interactive, but it's just not enough. The entrance to the second unit is here, so we'll need to come back later, but for now we press on into the Thalite mines. It's got great lighting, decent layout, and good design, but it's really just somehow not much to experience. Without the body horror nature of the original campaign being pushed to the forefront, it all quickly becomes the kind of repeated instances of a military sci-fi tech base that the main game was criticized of being. We won't spend too much time down here in the Thalite mines though, since we're only down here to gain access to the aforementioned tectonic stabilizer. Once we're in the area with that, we finally get something kind of interesting to do. This level is better. I'd say it's the best map of the unit actually. First off, we grab a new weapon called an ETF rifle. And it's pretty good actually. I liked it way more than any of the new weapons in the Reckoning. In the original release, this weapon used the nail gun firing sound from Quake 1, I assume due to time constraints, but Night Dive ended up giving it a more unique sound in this 2023 remaster. It's a great gun with its own specific ammo type called fletchets, so it's really good to lean on since it doesn't eat up ammo for the other weapons. Oh yeah, and we're also introduced to a new enemy type in this map too. This enemy is another reason why I liked Ground Zero more than the Reckoning, because it's cooler to fight and more interesting than that expansion's new Strogg types. The Stalker is an arachnid-like horror that can climb on walls and ceilings, making it easy for them to sneak up on you without your knowing, and they can also fire off green projectiles as well. Throwing these guys into an environment makes it instantly more tense, I'll tell you that much. Our job here is to destroy an insane number of these power circuits we see littered around the area. No, seriously, there's so many of them, and once we do this, we can feel the ground shaking as the tectonic stabilizer starts to give way. There's also access to a hidden map in this unit too, busting through a pipe and taking us down into mine engineering, where we have to fight through a section of the building that's collapsing, and it's obviously very well scripted. I like this one. It's a great little reward for people who are willing to scan maps more diligently for secrets. Also, this is where we get another of the expansion's new weapons, the Chain Fist. It sucks. I lament that it does, but it does. I'd have loved to use this thing more, but it's just not very powerful, and you take too much damage trying to use it. Super cool design, though. The lava actually does rise and chase the player as you play through the map, too, which adds a fun sense of urgency that I liked. With the tectonic stabilizer destroyed and the unit cleared, we move on to the next one.
Personnel located. Tectonic stabilizer destroyed. Now exiting. Ore mine.
You'll never guess what kind of locations we're in for here in Unit 2. Unless you guessed more warehouses, of course. I can't. Everything looks the same.
And I think I'm starting to lose it. I'm on Strogg still, I think.
Eastern Warehouse is our goal to find the red keycard and fight our way to the waterfront storage area. There's 2 new enemy types introduced here too. I cannot stand this enemy. We're doubling down on the Greek myth references here too, as this variant of the Icarus enemy type are called Daedalus, who was the father of Icarus and architected the labyrinth that contained the Minotaur. It was Daedalus who constructed the wings that he and Icarus used to escape that very same labyrinth that he designed after King Minos imprisoned him and his son there. Daedalus constructed those wings using bird feathers, thread, and beeswax to allow them to flap their arms and fly away. Daedalus warned his son Icarus not to fly too close to the burning star in the sky lest the heat melt the beeswax that held their wings together. And his son, ignoring his father's instruction, soared upward towards the sun, his wings melted, and he fell into the ocean and drowned. Which I'm using as a metaphor to explain how Rogue Entertainment tried to make this expansion more challenging to account for how good Quake 2 players had gotten at the game and ended up making it incredibly annoying. This enemy type is just a big, green, annoying flying bullet sponge. That's it. The other enemy type introduced in this level is the turret. I'm not going to talk about the turret just yet, but keep it in mind. I'm coming back to it. Up next is waterfront storage. It's warehouses. Rogue, what happened, guys? Your Quake 1 expansion was colorful and creative. Strife was like 10 years ahead of its time with what it attempted. What occurred at that studio to make them phone this all in so hard? It's all just warehouses. The logistics complex spices things up a little bit. So he dies on arrival from the crash, and our computer voice updates to tell us to finish carrying out that dead Marine's mission, as if we didn't have enough going on already. There's a tank commander down here, and we're going to need to pick his brain before we can go any further. And I mean that literally. So with his head chopped off, we make our way in there and grab it off the ground to carry it with us. We're gonna need it later. The final map of Unit 2, Tactical Command, is where we'll get the data disk we need before heading back to the logistic complex, reprogram the disk, align the satellites, come back to Tactical Command, and feed the corrupted data disk to disrupt the Strogg's ground-to-air communications network.
Now exiting. Communication facility. Locate Strogg research hangar. Securing threat. Strogg experimental fighter.
So, I thought Unit 2 was okay, but Unit 3... The Strogg are working on an experimental new fighter to use against humanity, and we need to find it before it can be launched, which means fighting our way through the research hangars. There's a few interesting surprises waiting for us here too, like if you didn't find the Chain Fist in the secret earlier, this is where you'd normally get it. Too bad it sucks and is nearly unusable because it's a really cool weapon. This isn't really a melee kind of game, though. Every enemy has projectile weapons, and half of them are hit scans, so, like, this doesn't work. One thing I have to give the devs credit for is that they did come up with a lot of great scripted sequences across these maps. I particularly liked this bit where you reprogram an anti-air gun to blast open the roof and allow our allied forces to drop an airstrike on it, which in turn grants us alternative access into the waste processing area. Across most of id Software's older catalog, you'll find tastefully implemented elements of puzzle solving and exploration to accomplish goals. In this map, and honestly kind of scattered across this unit in general, there's so much you need to do in order to progress. Flipping switches, turning valves, activating reactors. I mean, I do appreciate the interactivity of these levels beyond just shooting anything that moves and finding an exit, but you may have gone too far when I'm spending more time wandering around trying to figure out what to do than I am shooting at things in my Quake shooter game. So that leads us into waste disposal, which this is all looking so similar. Man, I'm starting to struggle to tell the difference between areas now. This is... Okay, so the waste disposal area is what leads to the maintenance hangar, which is where we need to go so we can find and steal that experimental Strogg starfighter.
And that... It's also boxy and brown.
And I always find something wrong. You've been putting up with my shit just way too long. I'm so gifted at finding what I don't like the most. And so I think it's time for us to have a toast. Let's have a toast for the douchebags. Let's have a toast for the assholes.
My pain is constant and sharp, and I do not hope for a better world for anyone. In fact, I want my pain to be inflicted on others. I want no one to escape.
Unit 4 is thankfully only 2 areas, and our goal here is to acquire the parts we'll need in order to create an antimatter bomb. Remember, the goal of this expansion is to infiltrate and destroy the Strogg gravity well, currently keeping our Earth fleet from moving, so we'll need 2 things in order to achieve this goal: an antimatter core and a containment pod. The good news is that we're pretty much through the worst of it now. The rest of Ground Zero is actually really good. Well, mostly really good. Rogue locked in to finish this off. Oh yeah, the turrets. These things are probably the single biggest criticism most people had of this expansion when it dropped. And that's for a reason. I can totally see why, because even in the 2023 remaster, which slightly nerfed them, these things are still completely insufferable. There's far more of these turrets across the Ground Zero campaign than any other enemy type except for like 1. Ground Zero Nightmare veterans probably still have PTSD-style flashbacks of these things. Anyway, back to the munitions plant. It's a decent enough area, although still kinda warehousey. It plays well, smooth layout, all around not bad. The Ammo Depot, on the other hand, offers up one of the single most unique aspects of the entirety of Quake 2, the Strogg Bio-Maintenance Chamber. This thing basically equips you as the player with a Strogg disguise, allowing you to appear as one of them and walk around the level without being engaged by enemy forces. See, this is one of those little things that makes this expansion better than the Reckoning, and also gives the player a break from the monotony of the base gameplay loop. You can use this mechanic as much as you like in this area, but the second you engage with the enemy or leave the area, the disguise will disappear. It's a neat little addition to the game, and I remembered this one thing more than like 75% of the rest of the expansion when I was done with it. Once we've acquired the antimatter core and inserted it into the container, now all we have to do is head for the gravity well via that gondola and deliver the payload. This is what I was looking for. This is the unique, interesting design one would expect of an expansion being handled by Rogue Entertainment. This is cool. So we head for the final unit of the game, Widow's Lair.
Locate gravity generator. Use antimatter bomb to destroy gravity well. Return to research hangar. Use experimental fighter for escape. End transmission.
This is the shortest unit of the game, containing only 1 area to fight through. The first thing we find is a drop pod lodged into the side of the wall as we hear a Marine banging to be let out.
Let me out.
Or sap. Entering into the gravity well, we enter the boss battle arena to meet our final foe. One-upping the first expansion, this one actually features an all-original boss character for players to fight via the Black Widow. It's not clear what her role is within the Strogg ranks lore-wise, but she's easily the strongest enemy type of any Quake 2 entry with the most health and highest damage. She can spawn infinite stalkers to the battlefield to try and kill the player, and is armed with a very powerful blaster and a railgun. That's not enough for you though. Once you destroy her, she teleports her upper body away and her lower half onto a new body that comes lumbering out in the form of a giant mechanical spider. This is her second form, and is in every way more powerful than her first. We also get this weird mural of her built into the entrance of the gravity well, which I can't show on YouTube, but is interesting to note. There probably should have been more of these throughout the expansion to build up the final boss, to be honest. I was caught off guard by her presence just because I was expecting another Macron fight, but it was a pleasant surprise. Anyway, there's the gravity well. The visual design of this final level is incredible, by the way. Where was this literally anywhere else in the rest of the expansion? We should have had like multiple levels with this aesthetic leading into the ending rather than relegating all of it to the last 4 minutes of the entire experience. What do you mean they can make super visually interesting areas and just opted to give us 2 hours of warehouses?
This is Private Stepchild calling the Demos. Stepchild calling the Demos. I've planted the charges on the gravity well generator. Inform all remaining ground troops to evacuate the area.
Copy that, Stepchild. Now get out of there.
Roger. Stepchild out.
Security breach detected. You are not clear for takeoff.
Shit, I'm not going to make it. Stepchild Demos, did it work?
Hell yes, it worked, Private. We're reporting total destruction of primary target and huge secondary chain reaction explosions all across the planet's surface. Nothing's living on that rock.
What about the others?
There aren't that many left to retrieve, Stepchild. You're one of the lucky few that made it out of that inferno in one piece.
Let's get the hell out of here.
When Ground Zero first released, it was received more negatively than The Reckoning, but this was mostly due to the increased difficulty of the turrets just pissing people off, and also, I would wager, the fatigue of playing so much Quake 2 so close together with so little distinguishing elements between the base game and its expansions. I was even feeling that myself, like I could tell I was being harder on these expansions just because I was getting tired of playing so much Quake 2 with so little variety. Overall, I liked Ground Zero slightly more than The Reckoning because it did feature a few interesting scripted sequences and its own original boss enemy, which helps it stand out far more overall. It's just really hard to recommend it to anyone who's not already a really big fan of Quake's gameplay and aesthetic though, because there isn't very much it offers that you couldn't find a better version of in the vanilla campaign beyond the boss, a couple of enemies, and a couple of interesting weapons. This was the end of official Quake 2 content for over 2 decades, but of course, along with the new 2023 remaster of Quake 2, came a brand new campaign called For Night Dive's Quake 2 Remaster, they invited Machine Games to come on board and develop a brand new campaign to launch alongside it, just like they'd done with Quake 1's Dimension of the Machine. Though this time, the new campaign was far more ambitious, more climactic, and sought to provide some long-needed closure to the hearts of Quake fans everywhere in an unexpected way. Keeping in the same theme as their first expansion, this one is named Call of the Machine and features 7 different playable Marines, 1 per new operation. Gone is the previous Quake 2 mission structure of levels being contained within a series of sequential units. Now, the units have been replaced with 6 separate operations, which can be played in any order the player desires. Though I looked up the best order to play through them and progressed in that fashion. Call of the Machine brings back the hub area concept with an explorable ship or space station containing a series of different screens, each for this specific Marine to monitor the individual operations from. Fittingly, this Marine is codenamed the Machine. On this space station, referred to in-game as the Strogg Gateway, we can see the planet Strogos in the distance, enveloped by the vast ocean of space. That portal is our only entrance to the location of the Strogg Maker. How does the Machine know about the Strogg Maker? How did he know about this portal? Great questions. Each operation transfers our perspective into the eyes of a different Marine who we inhabit for the duration of that operation, and opens with us descending in our drop pod. This is really cool, and already we're getting something totally unique to this expansion that helps it stand out. Each operation opens with this, and I love it. Super immersive. This opening area, called the Outer Complex, is already miles above anything we saw in the last two expansions too, although we need to be fair and keep in mind that this expansion was developed 2 decades later with the benefit of way more advanced hardware, so it damn well should be. We've got a plethora of dynamic moving objects across the map, great verticality across several open areas to navigate, and more than a few enemies to deal with. Seriously, I'm pretty sure this one level alone is more interesting and recognizable than anything available in the other expansions, and possibly even the base game, and it only gets better from here. Moving a bit forward, we enter into the Security Annex, which is really just more of the same, but with quite a bit more interior segments than the prior level. The most significant thing of note is actually how it introduces named mini-bosses, which are a prominent thing across this expansion. Essentially, they're just larger versions of previously encountered enemies, but little things like this actually make such an enormous difference in the feeling of the different areas. There's also physically upsized and downsized versions of regular enemies as well.
I don't know what the hell you feeding him, but he is too damn big!
But it hits different when they have names. The final level of this operation, though, is where it really started to sink in exactly what I was dealing with here. This expansion throws enemy NPCs at you unlike anything else you will have faced in a Quake game up until this point, and I gotta respect its game here. I had to legitimately step back and lock in so I could handle how much harder these levels were than the previous ones. Like, they're not messing around. The progression of these areas is completely brilliant, by the way. The fact that we touch down outside of this facility and slowly make our way deeper into its core, only to find ourselves climbing this tower to insert a data disk and realign a satellite dish, this is Quake 2 at its absolute best. The fog and fat of the previous 2 expansions have been removed, and the best features refined into the very best I think Quake 2 has ever felt. Embodying a new Marine codenamed Positivity, we drop into the heart of a Strogg base with orders to infiltrate the nearby junkyard and find the data disk we need. Most of these operations revolve around finding, reprogramming, and using different data disks. That's fine, it's not like Quake 2 levels have ever been particularly plot heavy anyway. Something I'll say about this operation though is that I did find it to be one of the more forgettable ones. Still top-notch premium quality on offer, and if anything, it may be more forgettable due just to how unique some of the other operations are, but it did blend together a bit more than some of the others for me. Although I did like this part where we have to shoot down these crates and hop over them. Just some great game design on display here. The scale is also really big here too, like this massive processing plant area where we have to disengage this machine in order to acquire a power cube and all of the lights shut down. It's so good. Moving on to the next area, by dropping down this vertical pipe tunnel, we find ourselves in heavy water. Our goal here is to find and disable the reactor core so we can get these shields shut down, and right away we find ourselves face to face with the Gex from the Reckoning. And not only that, but the Stalkers from Ground Zero are here too. See, that's one area where Machine Games improved on this expansion over their Quake 1 release, Dimension of the Machine, because Call of the Machine incorporates several elements from Quake 2's other expansions, like the enemies and weapons. It really helps give it this feeling that this is the culmination of everything you've been working towards, and as though the Strogg is throwing everything they've got at you now. Even though you play as 10 separate Marines across Quake 2 and these 3 expansions, and that's not even counting the N64 or PS1 ports, it's still you as the player feeling that escalation. In case you hadn't guessed, the reason this area is called Heavy Water is because you'll be doing a good amount of swimming in order to progress. Call of the Machine does a fantastic job with how it incorporates backtracking between these areas too. Each operation actually feels like a fleshed out series of structures that you'll need to explore and learn as you travel back and forth between areas. Also, secret levels make a comeback here too, with the aptly named McGee Station. Much like Sandy's room from the Quake 1 expansion, Dimension of the Machine, McGee Station is also named after one of the OG developers of Quake 2, American McGee. And it does kind of feel like an American McGee level in some ways too. It's very dark and takes you through a series of tunnels where you need to eradicate the Strogg enemies posted up throughout. It's a fairly easy secret level to find as well, arguably the easiest of the secret levels to locate, honestly. With the trial of McGee Station completed, we're taken back to the previous area to fight our way into the junkyard. Easily one of the more memorable levels of this expansion for me, not only because it looks really unique compared to anything else we've seen in Quake 2 before, but also because it kind of reminds me of Ord Mantell from Shadows of the Empire. Oh yeah, and there's a mini-boss fight here against a garbage carrier too. I have no idea what inspired these inclusions in every operation, but they're one of the coolest additions in my opinion. This rules. To wrap up this mission, we find the data disk in the junkyard control room, grab that, make our way around the cliffs and back to the uplink tower right by our pod where we dropped in so we can get this data uploaded, but not before we're attacked by yet another mini-boss. You can find multiple of these boss battles in some of these operations, which is also super cool, but we've got places to be, so... This one might be a contender for my favorite operation of the whole expansion. Playing as a Marine codenamed Sir Gubble, which apparently translates in Swedish to mean grumpy old man, we drop into some kind of mine on Strogos where we'll be fighting our way deeper into the mine. Unlike a lot of other operations in Call of the Machine, this one doesn't feature backtracking between areas, instead offering up a linear progression from start to finish. I really like the layout of this first area too. For some reason it feels very good to play and explore, which is a good thing because this is where the portal to another secret level is located. This is another secret level very similar to McGee's Station, where it's kind of just a trial arena for the player to overcome, but it's even more simplistic than that one was. Also like that level, this one was named after another industry veteran developer, though rather than an idsoft old guard, this one is referencing Dario and Milo Casali, most known for their work on the Doom expansions TNT Evolution and the Plutonia experiment. The devs over at Machine Games are clearly paying this era of gaming as much respect as they can, and it shows. Completing this trial takes us back into the previous level where we take an elevator down into the next area. This facility is actually called Megacorps 4, which is an insane thing to name your building, but all too fitting for a Strogg-owned structure in Quake 2. I mean, just look at the massive symbol for war to show how much of their enemy's blood they're harvesting. Dark stuff. One really interesting fact about this level is that it is continuously descending, which is honestly a theme of the whole operation. We move down into these shaft tunnels where we can't see anything, loaded with mutants, stuck with nothing but our flashlight the whole time while we're completely overrun by these things. We just keep on descending further and further down until we eventually find a lone Marine who's lost his mind hiding down here in this hallway that seems overrun with some kind of solidified flesh. He managed to get the blue key this far, but we'll have to take it from here, which leads us to the next area. This level is a boss arena where we'll be facing down against a boss called the Gate Warden. This area is relegated strictly to this boss battle, but don't be fooled as this is not the end of the expansion. These fights go so hard too, I can't even elaborate it to you, and during this fight we see several of our fellow Marines in these crusher pods being harvested to fuel this massive portal generator. Once we finish off our battle against the Gate Warden, it's down the portal we go. Okay, so that was weird. Anyway, we're on Earth's moon now in a base called the Luna Outpost, and it's been totally overrun by Strogg forces. In what is easily one of my favorite levels of the expansion, we get to fight our way through this low-gravity moon base, and it's the first time in Quake 2 that things have looked so distinctly different, visually speaking. I'm like 12 to 15 hours into Quake 2 at this point, and this is one of the first levels I encountered that wasn't some kind of Strogg-flavored tech base or alien canyon. I'm not really sure where they got the assets for this level either, which makes me wonder if they had someone create all of these specifically for this level. Like, this looks original. Once more, we're seeing that theme of descent as we make our way deeper and deeper into the base. There's something in the moon's core currently jamming the signal we need to send whatever data is on this disk. So we're gonna have to go down there, find whatever it is, and do what we do best. Oh, so there's a whole Macron down here. You might think this is a whole boss battle, but it's not. He's a mini-boss. The real boss battle of this operation comes after we push a little bit deeper into the moon's core and face off against the children of the Macron, which are just smaller Macrons, but there's two of them and they're also really dangerous. Once we eliminate the multi-Macron threat within the moon's core, the Strogg jammers are disabled and the data we had attempted to transmit is sent through. And I presume our Marine Sir Gubble dies here. Unlike the last operation, this one kind of takes things down a notch. That's not to say it's not a great unit or anything, because it definitely is, but it's just a little bit less insane than the previous set of levels. It's far more contained and concise, spanning across 3 main areas with 1 secret level. This first area is just so cool too. I really like this big arena-like courtyard area and how we could see the massive ringed planet in the distance. This is great. I think it might be one of the best designed layouts for an outdoor area in Quake that we've ever seen. The door into the base is locked, so our new Marine, codenamed Erickson, opens this mechanical door so we can drop down into the sewers and swim in that way. Classic. And you know we're cooking when the level name is the Strogg Flesh Labs, too. This area features a very special enemy type that doesn't appear anywhere else in any other expansion. This one is special, and was created as an exclusive enemy type for the Quake 2 PlayStation port back in 1999. A non-canonical alternative iteration of Quake 2 where it remained until being featured here in this mission, finally. This is a super cool inclusion, and I'm so glad they threw this guy in here. Even if it is only for this singular appearance, it still ended up being one of the more memorable parts of this operation for me. They didn't give him any visual upgrades or anything like they did with the other enemies in Quake 2, but if I'm being real with you, it's hardly noticeable, and he fits right in no problem. I got a little annoyed after this though, because the rest of this level just bleeds into the Quake 2 warehouse aesthetic, and although it's not this expansion's fault, I was so sick of crate carriers and warehouses by this point for obvious reasons, so I found myself just trying to get through the rest of this area as fast as I could. Of course, there's a secret level here too via a portal you can find near the start, and it's interesting in what it tries to do. Another trial map placing you in a long lava river where you have to jump across a series of moving platforms while avoiding fire and taking out enemies. That leads you through a series of industrial-looking halls, and it's honestly not bad. We get to take out the largest supply of hostile Strogg trash cans I've ever seen, and then we wrap it up and head back to the Strogg Flesh Labs. The real fun begins in the last level though, where the data disk we need is being kept safe, and the entrance to that area is back in the courtyard, which we can't get back to since we swam here through a sewer tunnel and the door back is locked, so we'll need to find another way. Yeah, that works. Throwing on a quad damage and deconstructing a few dozen Strogg leads us to the elevator and down into the mainframe. I would definitely call this the best area of the operation, and one of the most memorable levels in the expansion in total. First off, it's the only area that uses the turrets from Ground Zero, and to phenomenal effect as well. Dodging these blue lasers is another really memorable moment for me. I found this to be really cool. We also have the chance to climb up this massive tree-like machine, which I believe is the mainframe in question, that we then enter and navigate the inside of until we're able to destroy it, thereby disabling all of the lasers across the facility. It's not over yet though. Right after grabbing the data disk, we need to come face to face with another boss battle, this time in the form of the System Administrator. Giving them these unique boss names really amplifies this experience by giving it a kind of Souls-like world-building quality. Now, after beating the System Administrator, it can be easy to rush over and upload the data and complete the mission, but if you do a little exploring, you'll also discover a hidden mini-boss within the halls of the mainframe. And I do mean mini. Unlike the previous drops we've seen so far, this one shows a very different landscape view from our pod. We're on Earth now. As a Marine codenamed Brickslayer, we enter into what I believe is an old sewer station, but something is really different about this level. There's no Sonic Mayhem music here, it's just a humming ambience. This is a track pulled from the Quake 2 64 port soundtrack composed by Aubrey Hodges, which is super fitting for these levels beyond what I can describe. Masterful incorporation of every artifact of Quake 2's DNA in a way that feels organic, yet very different than anything we've seen before. This isn't the only operation that uses tracks from Quake 2 64, but I wanted to point it out here because it fits so well. Just complete bliss on the part of Machine Games here. Now, a lot of these operations feature backtracking through different areas, but this specific one takes that to another level. These areas are so connected and require so much backtracking that it genuinely feels like you're just playing across one massive area with a few loading screens. For example, on this level, one of the first things we see is the engine of a Strogg ship that's landed on top of this structure. Getting on board that ship is our biggest priority right now, and it's kind of an ever-present aspect that we can see in every level here. It's also drilling down into the surface, which blocks off a bunch of paths that we'll need to access later once we stop those drills and retract them back into the ship. It's really cool to be playing Quake 2 on Earth like this, and I love this railway tunnel as it reinforces that feeling of being on our own home turf.
Let me out.
Computer update.
They've been tearing through our boys here like carry-on, and we're running out of time. The way these areas constantly weave back and forth between one another is pretty much a masterclass of level design. Sometimes you're traveling underneath it all through these tunnels, and other times you're jumping above it via little platforming sections. If you're really trying to complete everything and find the secrets, this one will take you longer than most of the others for sure. The lack of metal music mixed with the chanting of the various geks across the buildings creates a sinister kind of ambient atmosphere that we haven't seen in one of these levels since back in the original Quake and its expansions. Before we can head up to the elevator into that Strogg ship, let's climb underneath this wall, head through this old abandoned tunnel, and... You didn't think I was gonna forget, did you? Alright, so we take the elevator up into the Strogg ship currently drilling into the Earth's surface, and this area is kind of a maze. There's 5 computers we need to find and interact with, and the whole ship is crawling with Strogg. And I'm not talking about just fodder Strogg either. We've got tanks, tank commanders, gladiators, medics, and almost 20 stalkers literally just crawling around on the ceiling. And a lot of these monsters are equipped with shields, which makes them even spongier than they otherwise would be. This is one of the only areas in this operation that plays a traditional metal track from Sonic Mayhem, which helps it stand out a lot from the other areas. Eventually, we are able to interact with each of the needed terminals to disable and retract the drills, which opens up a plethora of new avenues back down on the surface, including access to the dopefish. I showed it out of order, but whatever. The final level of Operation Ruined Earth is basically just a series of 3 different boss battles in a row, which I'm fine with. Starting with the Strogg Super Tank. If you're off-put that I'm calling these boss battles when they're really just named, beefed-up versions of standard enemies, then I feel you. I do. But they gave them names, so I'm basically throwing the terms boss and mini-boss battle around freely depending on where in the level they appear. All of them are relatively easy, and if you didn't accept them as genuine boss battles, I would understand. Now, playing through these in the order that I did makes this one the penultimate operation of the expansion, which is the way I highly recommend that everyone else also plays it. Dropping down into this super obvious boss battle arena where we finally find this operation's data disk, we grab it and face down the Strogg carrier. Destroying that isn't the end though, as we still have to board the ship and find the bridge, which is where we encounter the Strogg Mega Tank. Really creative names this go around, huh? Finally, once we kill that thing and clear our way to the Strogg bridge, we upload the data disk and transmit the data. Wait, what? Okay, so it turns out that on our way out of the Strogg ship shortly after disabling the drills, you can spot a brick wall near an already dead mutant and blow your way into another hidden tunnel system. Following this pipe will take you into this operation's secret level, which I missed because, to be honest, it's super easy to miss. Pumping Station 3. It brands itself as a sequel level to the Pumping Stations 1 and 2 levels from the Quake 2 base campaign, and I'm not sure why. Am I missing something? Why is it named this? Obviously it looks like those pumping stations, and I mean it clearly is a literal pumping station, but this station is on Earth, and those two were on Strogos. It is a pretty cool area though, and I like that it isn't a trial arena and is instead an old long-lost industrial area that looks as though it's been abandoned for years. It's only comprised of 2 rooms and one of them is just a small entrance area. This massive 2-floor arena is the primary room of this mission, and there is actually a boss here we'll need to destroy called the Ancient Carrier. So of course we huff a double damage power-up and make very short work of the old Strogg menace. What? Oh, I...
Missed something. The ancient head.
It's not worth it. Crashing through the atmosphere, our Marine, whom we are never shown the call sign of, receives his orders, and we, the player, are about to begin an operation unlike any other we've seen before. We touch down in a canyon of sorts. Something is somehow different this time. such as the grass in a Quake 2 level. This doesn't look like Strogos, but more like one of the Strogos moons, perhaps. Our job is to locate and verify the status on Badger Squad, who went radio silent somewhere in this region. One massive thing to note is that this level, much like the levels we talked about in the last operation, utilize a track from the Quake 2 Nintendo 64 port, which is super cool and adds an immense level of variety to this operation. I'm surprised they didn't use more tracks across this expansion, to be honest, but the sparing use of it primarily in these last two operations does add a lot of character to them in a way that separates them from the rest of the game. Of course, it isn't long before we're inside of a mine, seemingly built within a volcano, and of course, loaded with Strogg. Once again, a staggering amount of the textures we see I didn't recognize from any of Quake 2's levels, which gives off a stronger feeling that you're somewhere completely different. The layout is really linear, but very well designed. It flows well and features a lot of distinct visuals to help it all stand out. And I know I keep saying this, but playing these levels with no music is just something else. The lava here provides an impeccable atmosphere through its red glow, and the clash of stone and steel makes for a really compelling level to navigate. And probably my favorite part is this rock churner trap that we can activate at will in order to cross it and lure enemies after us, only to then turn it back on and watch them get crushed up. All of this leads us down a tunnel into this factory's cooling system, where we find ourselves even deeper underground. A boss rolls out to confront us called Overburden, and we face him down in this arena of large rocks surrounding this ornate stone pillar. Casting our gaze upon this pillar shows depictions of something that veterans of the series should recognize, but we're getting there. Deep within whatever mountain we landed on, we've come across some kind of ancient underground temple. Ornate triangular doorways sit before us, and the center door depicts illustrations of some kind. Trying to open a door, we're told an ancient evil whispers to us. Why does everything here look so not Quake 2? Anyway, we fight our way through one of the most spectacularly designed arenas in the game, and again, the soundtrack for this level is super different than anything else we've seen so far, because it's nothing. Droning ambience. It's so fitting for the tone here. The way the stone floor has been architected in such a meticulous and angular design, and the murals painting the walls suggest this place was built in reverence to something. Also, this buried ancient temple is a passage to this operation's secret level. This is the final secret level and is another trial challenge. It's once again just based on a single room and is very reminiscent of the other secret levels of this expansion. Honestly, this looks way more like the Earth-based levels from Machine Games' Quake 1 expansion Dimension of the Machine than it does anything in Quake 2. Which I'm assuming they probably just reused the textures from that expansion in this one. No judgment, I think it looks great and fits right in. Either way, it's overall a very short secret level that you can kinda just cut your way through before heading back into the temple. This last push deeper into the rooms of the temple are also reminiscent of the original Quake in their design, which if you've been paying literally any attention whatsoever at this point, you know exactly why that is. This giant hammer thing seems to be mining for something, but I'm unclear as to what exactly that might be. But while we're down here, we enter a boss arena where we take on the Underminer, another powerful super tank that seems to be guiding this mining operation here. With that boss destroyed, we eventually find ourselves falling down a tunnel in front of the data disk we've been searching for. I guess now we know what happened to Badger Squad. Can't let it be for nothing. We grab the disk, activate a bridge, and fight our way through another dozen or so Strogg units until we locate a massive portal behind a door.
Computer updated.
Oh yeah, it's all coming together. Time to kill these tanks and see what's behind door number 3.
Computer updated.
So I know you've all been wondering how they're planning on wrapping up such an incredible Quake 2 operation like this, and let me tell you, it's certainly a bold decision. This is Modir. He's a shambler, in a boss battle styled like the ever so iconic Chthon boss battle from the end of Quake 1's first episode. And we even kill him in the exact same way we did Chthon too. maybe Modier took over after the Quake Ranger dealt with Chthon twice in a row? This is a really fun little callback, and it's definitely nostalgic, but I'm pretty sure most people hated this boss battle in the original game, so reusing it for a Quake 2 battle is really funny. I don't have a problem with it though. I think it's fun, and it actually leads to the most interesting ending across any Quake episode or unit we've seen. We're back on the space station now, retaking the perspective of the Marine codenamed the Machine. His objective updates telling him to travel into the dimension of the Machine so he can kill the Strogg maker. Not only does this tie directly back to that final Quake 1 expansion, which kinda hinted at the origin of the Strogg, but now, playing as a Marine codenamed the Machine, we're going in to put a final end to this madness. Jumping through the portal drops us into a familiar looking area as we gather a few weapons lying around before entering a massive stone arena. Immediately, we're thrust into a boss battle against the Servitors of Creation, a super tank and a Hornet. This is the one level where I think Night Dive or Machine Games should have contracted a single original song to be played. For this, what is essentially a series finale, if I could have had my way, I would have had them contract Andrew Hulshult, just hear me out, to compose one original finale song that utilized riffs from the Trent Reznor Quake theme and put it in a style similar to the Sonic Mayhem Quake 2 score with a bunch of his own original riffs included. I have no doubt he'd have done it happily and for a reasonable price. Anyway, after we take down the Servitors of Creation, the acid pool below us begins to drain as we finally meet the Masters of the Machine.
It's you! It's you!
Yeah. It was all orchestrated by two lone shamblers who, if I'm understanding the murals correctly, were once servants of the ancient Eldritch Horror herself. This fight is actually a lot harder than I was ready for. You've got to really be giving it your all to beat these beasts, but with some persistence, this lone Marine can overcome the Masters of the Machine and put an end to this conflict for good. So yeah, that's how it ends. The Machine stops the Strogg maker, but loses himself to the void for all eternity in a horrific ending that, to be fair, the expansion did warn us was coming. Thus ends the final expansion of Quake 2, as 7 Marines work together to harvest the data needed to program the portal for one final showdown with the Masters of the Machine and finally stop the Scourge of the Strogg. So I have to mention that I have this kind of fan theory that the unnamed Marine from Operation Darkest Depths that lost his mind is actually Bitterman from the Quake 2 vanilla campaign. I mean, we know he survived thanks to that ending where we see his hand coming up, and I choose to believe that he made his way to a ship and worked alongside with the Marine codenamed the Machine to partake in that specific operation. And since we can't see that Marine's name on his pod, that's what I'm going with. I mean, what more can really be said? It's easily the best Quake 2 campaign, and even despite my fatigue going into it right after the prior 2 expansions, still managed to blow me away. For Quake 2 fans, I can see how much of a treat this was to us, a total love letter, but even if you're just a casual fan of FPS games with Lovecraftian themes, then there's still some great level design and visual aesthetics to sink your teeth into here. Machine Games really delivered with this one. Although the story is a bit thin, as are all Quake-related stories, the coolest thing about the plot of this expansion is that it finally ties together the worlds of Quake 1 and 2 into a cohesive merged universe after 2 decades of speculation and frustration. The 2 Machine campaigns are the thread that unites these games and finally makes the total package of Quake 1 and 2 feel like 2 halves of a very long and unique whole. Though there have been plenty of other Quake games, some that reinterpret these 2, some that tie directly into them, and others that try to just do their own thing, these 2 games and their expansions are the baseline upon which all other Quake games would spin off from. So it only feels right that the final 2 installments in the series, both chronologically and in real-life release order, would bring it back to them to resolve the universe in a way that feels loving, passionate, and committed beyond a want to make money or cash in on a beloved IP. Well done to Night Dive, and well done to Machine Games. You did justice by the property you sought to work on, and who could ask for more than that? Okay, so while I know that did feel like a really solid wrap-up to everything we've been talking about, we're still not quite done yet. Now that we've finished up our time with Quake 2's canonical entries, there's still the small fact that Quake 2's N64 iteration is actually an entirely unique campaign complete with its own maps, music, and narrative. So even though it's not actually canon to any of the other Quake games, as in they didn't even try to connect it since the Night Dive remaster just straight up calls it an alternate timeline, we still gotta cover it. And also the PS1 port too, a little bit later, but I'm just going to touch on that one. Developed by Midway Games, the Quake 2 Nintendo 64 port shook things up from their work on the original Quake 64, which was more of a direct port of its PC counterpart with a few levels removed. Since that one didn't sell as well as they'd hoped and received some criticism following their high quality and original work on Doom 64, which was also a completely unique game using the Doom IP, Midway decided to go all in once again to create a new experience exclusive to those playing Quake 2 on the Nintendo 64. And I'm going to go ahead and just say that I loved this version of Quake 2. It's so good. It might actually be one of my favorite experiences out of all of the Quake content I've covered so far. I would definitely say I enjoyed it more than most of the other campaigns, that's for sure. So the first thing I wanted to do was quickly take a look at the original N64 version itself to get an idea of how it all looked, since I'd never played it before doing so for this video. The menu is really cool, and the mega chromed out version of the logo spinning around is a choice, but I respect it. Also, it's interesting how you can customize your character like this by naming him and changing the color of his armor, which comes complete with different player portraits depending on your choice of color. For the multiplayer, of course, since this clearly doesn't matter in the single player. Getting into the game, everything looks great under the circumstances, but it just plays like ass. It's rough, and by no fault of its own. The Nintendo 64 controller is just ridiculous, and always has been, especially when it comes to shooters. They were doing the best they could here, but it's just so rough to play this when you've gotten used to how Quake is supposed to feel. The frame rate is abysmal, the movement is stiff, and the aiming is an entirely new challenge for you to have to overcome all on its own. And I'm not saying any of this to degrade this port, by the way. If this was still the only way to play it, I'd be all over recommending it, trust me. But it's not the only way to play it. And it's most definitely not the best way to play it, since Night Dive also carried over this entire campaign into their Quake 2 remaster. Unlike their Quake 1 remaster's take on the N64 port, there's no unnecessary CRT filters this time around, or really any distractors of any kind to speak of. It's just an optimal way to experience a wholly unique new Quake 2 campaign, and I highly recommend it. The entire thing is completable start to finish in just over 2 hours, so it's not even like it's a massive time commitment or anything either. I'm still going to go ahead and cover it all level by level, just like I did with the other campaigns, so you can know what's going on in this alternate Quake 2 timeline. But I'm telling you now that these maps are much smaller, and the whole campaign is much shorter. We start off in the Strogg Outpost, where, unlike any other Quake campaigns, we don't actually get a drop pod to explain how we got here. We're just kinda dropped into this canyon as things are exploding around us, I assume due to a bombing run of sorts. Something that was carried over from the N64 port of this PC remaster is the far more saturated color palette. Look at this purple water and these deep reds and blues. I don't know exactly why, but both the N64 and PC versions of this campaign have much more colorful and atmospheric color palettes. It does make it feel a bit more cartoony, but it also makes everything feel far more alien and sci-fi, in a good way. It's kind of a breath of fresh air compared to what things have looked like across the last 4 campaigns. Also, I love these little in-level cutscenes that show us Bitterman's character model. Another thing carried over from the console version are these in-between level progression pictures to show the layout of the game's story and where we are. I adore this. This feels like the old in-level pictures from Doom, and is another contributing factor to this game's unique charm. This is so cool. Entering into the central complex, our job is to find some explosive charges, use them to destroy a security terminal, and then find the teleporter out. Again, I really just love how different this game looks. It's just so vibrant, and the way they use the textures makes every room feel more visually appealing to look at. I'm almost positive this is a result of how much smaller these maps are. I mean, every level can be completed in just a few minutes, and this probably made it a lot easier to focus on refining how each map looked and felt to play when compared to playtesting the far larger, interconnected areas of the PC version. We plant the explosives, blow up the security terminal, and then head for the teleporter to take us into the next area. So like I was just saying, this game doesn't feature any hubs or backtracking. Each level is its own linear step on the path towards the game's finale, and to be honest, I found this to be a refreshing change of pace after dealing with the prior expansions. I'd probably be a little bit harder on this game if I hadn't just experienced what Quake 2 is like when the intensity is dialed up to 11, but after playing what that feels like, there's something so enjoyable and relaxing about a more straightforward, fun-focused version of Quake 2. I know it's shocking, but a game that just lets you shoot your way across straightforward levels without trying to obliterate you or trick you every 5 minutes is actually a good time. The mission here is familiar as well. Find the data disk located in this area. Simple enough. This part where we have to platform over these trigger lasers is really cool too, and there's a tank waiting for us on the other side standing between us and that disk. Once we grab said disk, we're able to find the elevator out of this stage and into the next one. Once again, our objective is simple. Find the terminal and upload the data disk. Something noteworthy about this specific level is that it shares a lot of its layout with a similarly named comm center level from Quake 2's PC version, meaning players may feel a slight sense of deja vu when going through this one. It's like a way smaller, more condensed version of that level, but it still works great here, and we get a similar satellite animation when interacting with the terminal here as we did in the vanilla game. After uploading the data coordinates, we take another nearby teleporter from the planet's surface of Strogg up to a space station just above us. We're going interplanetary. Teleporters were present in the base game too, but they were used far more sparingly than we see them here. Quake 2 64 does end a lot of its levels with a teleporter to easily explain how your character is getting from one location to another, but the PC version of Quake 2, and even to some degree Quake 1, tried to use teleporters far less, since apparently Carmack believed they were a crutch for bad level design. This game doesn't care about that though. Also, look how cool this big thing is. This is the station's gravity generator, and it's one of the coolest designs for a gravity generator I've seen in a sci-fi game. I can't imagine trying to deal with this low gravity level on the N64 controller in the late 90s though. That sounds nightmarish to me. There was some very obvious ambition for this game. I mean, look at how they programmed a Strogg fighter to fly out of the hangar like this. Awesome work, Midway. Unlocking the elevator, we're able to head deeper into the space station into the next area. Oh, just missed it. Better luck next time. Our mission objective here is also simple. Find the station's generators and blow them up. I assume this is supposed to be a black hole generator since it resembles the one we saw in the PC version, which is cool because I love this design. Although it does look a little different, with a far less industrial, more sci-fi aesthetic to it. The same could honestly be said about this campaign as a whole though. There's 3 generators scattered across this area, and we'll need to fight our way to each individual one and plant an explosive charge on it to knock that black hole device offline. Once all 3 charges are placed, we're given 2 minutes to find a way off the station before it explodes, which is pretty easy since there's a Strogg ship docked with the station that we can just board and fly out of here. That same Strogg ship flies us off the station and ends up docking with a Strogg freighter, however. Yeah, we're all over the place in this expansion, and I love it for that. Now, we need to get to the Strogg moon, so we're gonna have to kill our way to the bridge and change this freighter's navigation charts to take us there. Are you seeing it yet, by the way? How visually distinct and pleasing all of these environments are to look at compared to some of the stuff we've seen across the other Quake 2 offerings? I don't think Midway gets nearly enough credit for the work they did on this game, to be honest. It's kind of a hidden gem within the Quake 2 remaster now. Anyway, we reprogram the freighter's heading and go back down to the cargo bay. So we're on our way to the moon, but we're gonna need to find a ship to take off this freighter to get down there. Oh, yeah, that'll work. So we gotta find that Strogg fighter, which of course means crawling through the ship's sewer tunnels and fighting through a conveyor belt area, carrying supply crates. There's always a conveyor belt cargo area. Is cargo bay just another way of saying warehouse? It's always a warehouse. Everywhere is a warehouse. This isn't a sci-fi freighter, it's just a warehouse. It's not even Quake 2, it's just warehouse. Warehouse 2. So we end up taking a drop pod to the moon's surface instead of that starfighter, which would have been cool if we flew in on that though. I actually ended up liking these mine areas too. They felt similar to some of the sections we saw in The Reckoning in the way they're laid out and look, and that's because the devs tried to recreate parts from that expansion's command center level, which is also cool because it gives that air of familiarity to it for those of us playing through it all in order, although the slidey ice mechanic is still annoying, and I imagine induced severe rage on players trying to navigate this on an N64 controller back in the day. I'm gonna keep bringing that up because if you played this back then I'm telling you to give it another shot on this remaster because it paints it in a whole new light. Also, what's that big pointy thing? Stuff like this is what those first 2 expansions needed more of. Weird alien landmarks, things to help levels stand out from each other. Less warehouses.
Oh, come on!
Okay, yeah, we got warehouses. I'm pretty sure you have to include multiple warehouses and storage areas in your Quake 2 game or it doesn't count. We're still on the moon here and there's not much to say about these next 2 levels other than they're storage areas. Crates, crate carriers, we've seen this before. We do get our first super tank fight here though, and this exterior area looks great. The moon's atmosphere in the skybox looks fantastic, and we can find our first BFG here too, right before activating this laser. It's a great little boss fight. So we take out that super tank and move on to a different planet? Wait, we're still in the storage facility, and we just took a big elevator down deeper into the same building we were just in. Also, we start the level in a tram docking area, but not directly in said room, but in a hallway accessing the room. So we didn't ride this tram here, but this is also the same room from the lower hangars area in the Reckoning, but we're still back on the moon. Whatever, I'm not spending time on this level, let's move on. Oh, it's more warehouses with a conveyor belt that we need to activate to ride on.
Daring today, aren't we?
It's all storage areas. I'm not even leaving anything out. It's just rooms of crates and enemies, and pieces of it are taken straight out of the base game's warehouse levels too, so half of it isn't even original. We're back with this level though, opening on a pretty interesting train ride above a river running with hot lava and leading into the geothermal station we need to get into. There's also a quad damage power up here, and picking up power-ups in Quake 264 immediately activates them, so there's no saving and using them when you want. If you grab a power-up,
you have to fight it.
I really like this area where we deactivate the cooling pump so we can use the pump's tube system to drop down into the next area. This is such a clever way to transition from one level to another. I love this. And we've got the return of the green water. Most of the water in this campaign is purple tinted, so when it's green like this, I feel like it stands out a lot more. Eagle-eyed fans of the franchise might notice how this level takes cues from the base game's detention and prison levels by using the same textures, a similar layout, and even featuring a cage of prisoners that lowers into the lava from the base game as well. Sorry guys. Also, can someone tell me why this Nintendo console game has more of the gory horror elements than any of the 3 expansions did? Look at this crusher machine just obliterating these marines like cattle. It's grotesque. I feel like these elements got lost after the vanilla Quake 2 campaign, so it's nice to see them present here in the N64 version. Moving on, we ride this conveyor belt into the next level. Quake 2 on the PC was at its absolute best when it embraced its own horrific implications and showed how horrific and evil the Strogg menace are, focusing on the atmosphere, and we see that bleeding over here too in a big way. These levels feel like a straight-up horror game at times, with rooms showing Marines being tortured and experimented on, and being prepared for the Stroggification process. Where was this in the expansions? Even Machine Games failed to meaningfully incorporate these more gory elements. You only really see how evil the Strogg are if you play either the vanilla PC game or this N64 version. Or I guess Quake 4, but we're not there yet. Which I guess is fun, because having things be this dark on the N64 is just really amusing to me. The exit on this level is actually a train that we see physically depart and head down the railway. We pull up to a berserker, immediately jumping onto the train to attack us before entering into the rest of the bio-waste treatment. We get some interesting set pieces like this pipe system that we navigate through and interact with to transfer water. It's honestly a really short level, even for this game, and you'll end up cutting your way through it pretty quickly, but it does make for a great level, and it's very tightly done. Plays very well. The final level on this moon, or planet, or wherever we are currently, as I'm unclear on that, is another short one, but still really good nonetheless. The layout is particularly interesting here as well, with a ton of verticality that makes it feel almost like something we might have seen in a Quake 1 map for some reason. It also kind of reminded me of Daikatana, probably due to the green sludge everywhere. Both this level and the level before it are centered around this massive hatch that leads to the facility core, and disengaging the lock so we can open it and head down. So at the end of this level, we manage to get that hatch open and begin our descent into the core. Just like those last 2 missions, these final two missions feel like 2 parts of a single mission. I know that was a mouthful, just stay with me, because I also think they're some of my favorite looking areas that we've seen so far. A large portion of the level is designed around us navigating these moving platforms that take us up and down in order to progress. It's also kind of disorienting because it feels like you can seemingly go down forever, but when you get off, it feels like you've barely moved at all. And there's plenty of enemies trying to kill you all the while too, of course. Man, I cannot imagine trying to do this on the N64 controller, by the way. I said I was going to be bringing it up, and I meant it, because seriously, if your only experience with this game is from the N64 copy, please do yourself a favor and try the remastered version. This is a really cool build up to the game's climax though, and since we're pretty much at the end, getting to fight through all of these moving parts makes us truly feel as though we've entered into the machine to destroy it from the inside out. Speaking of, let's finish this. So this is pretty much just a boss battle arena. We load up on some ammo and resources with one final goal in mind: destroy the core. Though of course there's 4 boss enemies standing between us and that goal, referred to in-game as the Guardians. Quake 264 doesn't feature the Macron, so instead we end up facing down 2 super tanks. Again, the colors and design of this arena are super unique to this game, and I really found it to be one of the coolest looking boss arenas across any of the Quake 2 content I've looked at so far. Upon destroying the 2 super tanks, the walls open up to send out 2 Hornets for us to demolish as well. And once they've been overcome, we ride an elevator up into the command core, and I presume we destroy it? It doesn't really show us anything blowing up or being shut down, so I guess we're just supposed to assume the core has been powered down and a lone Marine has escaped with his life. Okay, so I obviously loved this game. Or at least playing the remastered version of it anyway. It's not very long, but it's tight-knit and cohesive with some really unique elements that help it to stand out from its sibling campaigns. It's also more visually distinct than any of the others and features a lot of super fun layouts that feel great to play through. That said, it's really easy compared to all of the other experiences too. There's less enemies and they're a lot easier to handle, so if you're interested in trying Quake 2 but aren't super familiar with shooters, then Quake 264 Remaster would make a great introductory kind of prologue episode before diving headfirst into the main game. Lastly, there's one more thing I need to talk about before we finish up our time with Quake 2, and that's the PS1 port developed by a short-lived studio called Hammerhead that only ever worked on 6 games before vanishing, this being one of them. And when I say vanish, I mean that I can't seem to find any information on what happened to this team beyond that the founders had broken away from a different studio called Traveler's Tales, a studio you probably know mostly for the LEGO games, in order to found Hammerhead before eventually going back to Traveler's Tales again. But that's just what I found because there's so little info about this studio or anyone involved at all. As for the game itself, I don't have as much to say about it that we haven't already covered in some capacity. Most of this port is actually just that, a direct port of the PC version, just with most of its levels missing. It's kind of a hodgepodge mutation of different things because it uses cutscenes and some music from the Ground Zero expansion. The first level is ripped from Quake 264, but it connects directly to the original Quake 2 first unit. And the linear progression of the N64 game is gone, as this plays more like the PC version as well, featuring different units, each with a set of levels that you can freely travel back and forth between. The fact that they connected the opening level of the N64 game to the first unit from the PC version is really cool, but that's kind of where the uniqueness ends. Missions 2 and 3 are direct ports of the bunker and power plant units from the PC. Mission 4 is a pieced together port of the big gun level with a new area, the research lab and launch command levels into a new unit, and Mission 5 is just a direct port of the last 2 levels of the PC game together. So it's all stuff we've already seen before, and the only other standout inclusions here are the Arachnid, an enemy we covered earlier in Call of the Machine, and the Guardian. This enemy served as a one-off boss battle and is one of only 3 enemies that only ever appear a single time across all official Quake 2 releases, the other 2 being the 2 Black Widow Guardian instances from the end of Ground Zero. It was apparently supposed to be called a Strider according to the game's code, which is honestly a fitting name, but it got changed to the Guardian during development. It's a bit of a shame they didn't use this guy in Call of the Machine though. It's really cool, and there's nothing else even close to this in any of the other campaigns. It would have made an excellent boss battle instead of just reusing the super tanks, Hornets, and Macrons over and over again. I'd have used him in Operation Firewall personally, since not only is that where the Arachnid shows up too, but that ending arena where you fight another Macron looks similar to the area where you fight this guy anyway. They 100% should have just used this enemy as the system administrator instead of another Macron fight. Such a missed opportunity. There's actually an unofficial fan-made project called Quake 2 PSX that makes all of the PS1 port's content playable via the Quake 2 PC remaster, and these guys even went so far as to totally overhaul both the Guardian and the Arachnid with sleeker new models, textures, and AI behaviors, so they feel great to play. This is actually what I used to gather the footage of this port that you're seeing, and how I chose to play through the experience. Though I did get a little footage from the original too. So why should you play it if it's just the levels you've already seen from the original then? Well, because they may be the same, but they're also a little bit different.
We are the same, you and me. Well, I mean, we are different, but we are the same.
Most of the recognizable levels have areas removed, environments altered, enemy placements changed, and just overall play very differently than you may remember. Certain things have been changed too, making for a unique alternative way to experience the vanilla Quake 2 campaign. I'm now officially recommending that Night Dive reach out to these guys and utilize their work in the Quake 2 remaster. And also get Machine Games to patch in the Guardian somewhere and call it the Machine. It would be so cool. So that's it. We started with the Reckoning and made our way to the end of every Quake 2 expansion, and my sanity is just about here. Quake 2 is an enormous experience, and covering all of this has been an equally enormous undertaking, eclipsing even the amount of work I put into the first Quake and its expansions. We've seen alien worlds, moons, space stations, and desolate locations even on Earth itself. We've fought corrupted humans, cybernetic monsters, and eldritch entities. And I think after all of this, with everything now behind us, I can, with full confidence, say Quake 2 is pretty good. Whoa, thanks for sticking it out this long. In case you couldn't tell, this video has been beating the hell out of me for months. I'm gonna keep this outro short since I've said enough already, and at this point I'm just trying to get this video done. But thanks for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and also become a member or patron via the links below to help support my coverage on future games just like these. I can't wait to see you in the next video, but until then, that's all I've got for you.